Hello, and welcome to another episode of HardpinLabs Live, an interactive space for creators, campaigns, and organizations who want to sharpen their storytelling and create content that really connects. Think of it as an open lab where we share what we've learned, trade best practices, and bring in experts who can help push your own content further. Remember that you can submit questions at any time by going to hardpin.live or join us for a more interactive experience by joining the second screen by either going to full.hardpin.live if you're on your desktop or event.hardpin.live if you're on your mobile device and want to watch the show on YouTube and just participate using your iPad or phone. And as always, if you want to join the community, please go to hardpin.com/sign up and sign up for our newsletter, which will advise you on when our next live will be hitting the air. Without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. My name is Simon Koss. I'm the CEO here at Hardpin, and I'm the host of HardpinLabs Live. I'm joined by Russell Calkins, partner and CTO here at Hardpin, who oversees our tech stack, leads our gear innovation, studio builds, and live solutions. And we have two guest panelists today that I'm really excited to introduce. First, we've got Maya Hutchinson, who leads Battleground AI, creating AI-powered advertising infrastructure specifically designed for regulated industries like political campaigns where compliance and speed must coexist. She's also a fellow Obama alumni, starting her career as part of the 2012 digital team, as I did. She has spent over a decade at the intersection of technology, data, and progressive advocacy, understanding both the urgency and responsibility of mission-driven messaging. And we're joined by Franz Josef Schrepp, who heads up partnerships at OpusClip, the #1 AI video editing tool trusted by over 16 million creators, media companies, and businesses worldwide to transform long-form content into viral-ready clips. He's also the author of the book on partnerships and hosts his own podcast, the Partnership Podcast. So definitely check those out. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Before we dive into the questions, I wanted to take a second to give our guest panelists an opportunity to really talk a little bit about sort of their space, and what their organizations do as it relates to AI technology and tools, and how that really is a superpower for a lot of organizations and campaigns to be thinking about plugging into. Maya, I'd love to start with you. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Battleground AI and how people should be thinking about that as a resource.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Really excited to talk about this. Very timely. There is a lot going on in the
For
advertising
sure.
video space. Yeah, Battleground AI, we focus on creating compliant advertising infrastructure for organizations who face stricter regulations and barriers, whether it's state, federal, platform restrictions. And we do this across text, introduced images over the summer, and we have been hard at work working on this from a video perspective as well. How can we help folks create compliance and not sacrifice the speed and the technology innovation that's happening in the space, and do that in a really thoughtful and strategic way? We have seen thousands of we started with images. We had thousands of images created in this last cycle. We have been early alpha testing our video tool as well, which is exciting. We have not announced or launched that yet. So sneak peek at that, and excited to talk through how that's actually shaping the industry, getting folks to feel comfortable and confident using AI as a tool to do this smarter and more efficiently, and excited to talk through more of what we're building and how that relates to our much larger conversation here.
Awesome. Thank you. And Franz, can you tell us a little bit more about OpusClip? I feel like OpusClip is like quickly becoming ubiquitous in the world of like content creation and how it's being used by people in a really effective way, especially given the sort of current media ecosystem and the value of clipping and the value of content, like a massive amount of content creation. But talk to us a little bit about Opus Clip, what it does, and how people should think about it as a resource.
Yeah, absolutely. So Opus Clip is a AI video clipping tool. It's the number one AI video clipping tool in the world, used by 16 million people, which is a pretty large number considering the tool has been around for around 2.5 years or so. And it really started in the podcasting space. So
Right.
what we saw was that in the podcasting space, a lot of podcasters would create this great content, which was like an hour or two, or maybe even 4 hours long. But it was very hard to get anybody to view this content. And so what we do is we use AI to view the content, find the best moments, and then clip it into different formats. So it could be vertical, square, horizontal, depending on which social platform you want to post on. Then we add captions, we add your intro videos, outros, and so forth, and get them production ready so you can post. So even an individual podcaster can now create, 20, 30 different short form videos out of one episode and just fill up their entire months of content on social media. And as we matured as a company, we started working with like the largest news organizations in the world because guess what? They have a lot of long form content, like in these
Right.
long form news broadcasts, that they're very good at creating, but they're not very good at sitting down and actually finding the best moments and posting them onto social. And similarly, now we also work with a lot of, campaigns, PACs as well, because again, political candidates are very good at creating long form, but maybe not the short form that does best on social media. And that's where we really step in and help them like multiply their content for those platforms.
Yeah, it's an awesome tool. It's funny. We've used it a bunch, even just to give us a sense for it does a really good job of sort of predicting the virality and the sort of interest that clips will generate, and we've used it in that way. And what we're really excited about for this episode specifically is we actually in the background have a second stream that we're streaming that is a clean feed that is auto switching between folks that are talking, and we're going to use that to really generate a ton of great clips from this episode that we're going to try and put out really quickly after the show to really see how that workflow goes, and then we'll be able to talk about that on our next episode, and then also probably on some social posts post event. So really excited to leverage Opus Clip for this episode specifically and see just how many great clips we can put out there relatively quickly once the show wraps. And I know we had a discussion yesterday where we talked about the potential to be doing this like during the live, but that felt like a little bit too ambitious, and we really want to just make sure we get great quality out of this episode once we wrap. So excited about that as well. I wanted to so we're going to jump into the questions in a second here. Just want to again thank everybody who's joining us. Remember, if you have any questions that you want to ask as you're watching the show, you can submit them at any time. We'll get to those as we continue to have a conversation in the show. And obviously, for those folks that are taking part in the second screen experience, you can vote those questions up and down in the queue ahead of them getting served on deck to our panelists. But without further ado, let's jump into the questions. Our first one comes to us from Johanna Salazar. Let me post that. As AI becomes embedded across production workflows, what practices or standards do you think should be adopted industry-wide to verify authenticity and prevent misinformation from scaling? Creator, host of the Media Machine podcast. So Johanna has her own podcast. Russ, do you want to take this away? I feel like this is actually sort of great for our panel today, but also great for our last panel discussion with Jeremy Carasso. Russ, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So we covered this a lot last podcast. Essentially, one of the things about especially video and especially making video with AI that's usually I'm all about bootstrapping and making your own company from your own garage and awesome and whatnot. But and against like giant megaliths, like making everything. But one of the benefits of it costing $50 billion to get into the space is that the group of folks who can actually effectively fake stuff right now is pretty small. You can get like all five of them in the room at the same time and talk about standards and talk about how you're going to standardize things and talk about how you're going to add things like CP2A and other certification standards at the time of creation and metadata at the time of creation to kind of certify that these are these clips are genuine, or to mark AI as AI generated. So that would be something that I would really hope would move pretty quickly, is getting OpenAI and Google and a couple others in the room to kind of come together and really codify standards on that.
Any thoughts to add here, Maya? I know you work more in sort of the with a regulatory framework, but is there anything that sort of you're thinking about when it comes to this, this sort of reality we're living in, where there is, deep fakes and all of this other stuff that is competing in the space?
Yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of that, and Russ obviously touched on it, a lot of that comes definitely on the organic side. We do focus a lot primarily on advertising, where there are a lot more restrictions and limitations. Right. There are state level compliance requirements, there are federal compliance requirements, platform specific ones, right? There's a whole host of things you have to think about when you're taking a piece of content and moving it from organic or just on your computer to an advertisement. And we really work to build in that structure to the creation process. And that means, all the way through the flow, and also thinking about that to be able to immediately take something and turn it into a viable ad. So layering in that compliance, which to Russ's point on like the large language models and companies that are driving these models, that's not necessarily top of mind, right? You want to have a model that can do a lot and push the technology forward. It is also on us to be able to move tools in a way that meet the objectives of what we're trying to do every day, and the tasks and the work, and advocate for pieces of that.
Yeah, totally. And I think and we discussed this, with Will and Jeremy last week, and I think it's an important point to make again, especially in the conversation we're having today, which is that like there should be a distinction between this idea of like AI as a generating tool that can do all of these things that look real and all of that, and AI as a literal tool that allows an organization or an individual to really effectively like amplify the impact of the thing they're doing, right? Whether it's the stuff, Maya, that you're talking about with your organization, or Opus Clip, which again, it's not doing anything nefarious. It's just streamlining and supercharging a capability that still requires a user to create the content that it does, that is part of that workflow. And so there was a lot of doom and gloom last episode around like AI as this sort of like scary thing. And the reason I was really excited about this episode was because we're really talking about it much more as this like really effective tool when it is used for a specific task or a specific set of tasks, and can do really, really, really meaningful work for folks that help create impact and sort of create visibility for
Yeah,
organizations.
absolutely. I think there's like that distinction is so important, right? This is what we see when we work with like very large, media companies and political campaigns and so forth as well. Like there are two different types of tools, the ones which generate net new content. And I think in those, the risk of misinformation is much larger just because it's so cheap and easy to create new content that might
Right.
not be factual, right? But on the other hand, you have tools which just automate workflows or just enhance like the capabilities of an existing editor, right? Like at Opus, what we do is we turn a live stream, which is news or a political speech which has already been broadcasted, into smaller clips and post those. But the seed of the content, like the actual information, is still authentic. It's still that person speaking, right? And
Right.
so I think they're, at least from what we've seen, like there's much less hesitancy to adopt a tool like this because there's less risk because it's still authentic content at its core. And then the other thing around misinformation is you still probably run into the same challenges you had before. It's just now, probably like easier to get that content out, but the questions that we have to answer as an industry are probably the exact same that we had like 5 years ago. Nothing really changed in that sense. Versus like deep fakes where somebody's saying something that they didn't say. I think that's a much bigger question. That's like a net new challenge that we need to grapple with.
Right, totally. Which actually, I think this is a good next question to get to, because I think it sort of builds on this discussion, which is, this comes to us from Patrick. If I'm thinking about these, there's a little typo there, but if I'm thinking about these productivity tools, what actually makes it AI, not just automation? So how should people be thinking about the sort of like, I think what they're asking is like, what makes it, sort of like artificial intelligence, or what makes it something more than just an automation step in your workflow?
Yeah.
Franz, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are the conversations we have all the time. The biggest difference between automation and AI is on whether the outcome is deterministic, right? You can
Mm,
imagine automation in the traditional sense is just a checklist. You just kind of like
right.
follow one step after the other, and then you kind of get the same output. So you could imagine you put in a video, and then you know exactly 100% every time what the output should be. With AI, like the AI actually is non-deterministic, so it's actually hard to predict what will come out at the end. There's somewhat of a black box with a lot of these large language models and video models as well, that it's not 100% clear what the output will be because the AI will infuse its own taste as well. And I think that's something which we're seeing a lot where, customers might come to us with the request that we should make videos in a specific style, and we will get it like roughly to where they want it to be, but then the AI will still infuse its own taste, and there's still like a lot of learning which comes based on the feedback from the customer to ensure that the content actually gets then to the point where the customer wants it to be. Um, that is also like the most exciting part about AI because you can actually infuse these kind of pieces of content with a lot more information that you could previously. So one of the things we do at Opus, for example, is we take your entire content archive, all the speeches that, a candidate, for example, has given, or all the news that you think is worth posting on social. And then we follow trends on social media, like on Reddit and X and so forth. And like we match them with your archive. So if your candidate goes viral or a topic that they talked about previously goes viral, we will go into the archive and find those moments and put them out. But we can't tell you exactly why a piece of content was, the content that the AI wanted to put out. Like there's so much information that it's using to make these decisions that we can give you a good estimate of why it's happening, but in reality, like there's still like some magic in the background that is non-deterministic.
Oh.
I like that when I said magic, the balloons came up.
Yeah,
That was this is the kind of
that's
production
perfect.
value we bring to this
That was
show.
also AI, non-deterministic.
Right.
That's a perfect example. I thought you articulated that really well. I was just going to add that, yeah, it gets smarter. I think that is, just a simple way to put it, I think, is like it gets smarter as, to Franz's exact point, folks give feedback on it, right? It's
Mhm.
gonna, I think, incorporating the human feedback into the loop, as well as performance feedback and other elements, is a really critical part of the learning process for AI, and not just having it continually automate the same results. You want it to get better, and that can be it's it often is initially a human's feedback, but oftentimes you'll see, especially from our perspective, if someone thinks something is great, or reverse, they think it's bad, and it runs as an ad, it often gets exactly the opposite results as a human might think.
Right.
So in that case, it is always great to have a test, and give that learning back to AI, so that whatever model you're using, but learns and gets smarter for your workflow.
Right. A question, Russ, do you have, yeah, let me let
Yeah,
you weigh in here.
I think publicly there's kind of a gray area here, how we think about this, because most people, when we talk about AI, are thinking about generative AI, right? They're not thinking about evaluative AI and these things, and whether or not it's a productivity tool. I mean, if you think about it, what is Google? What has Google been for the last 20 years? I mean, if you had asked someone in 1995, it would be magic, but it would definitely be artificial intelligence. That it scans the entire internet and thinks about the entire internet, about where everything is, and helps you find anything in milliseconds, right? But we just accept that as a productivity tool because it's not creating things; it's helping us organize things. So I think that there's an overlap between what is actually AI and what is actually a productivity tool. And I think that I think that most people think about AI in the scary sense right now, in terms of the generative thing, and less in terms of the productivity thing. But I think a lot of times it's both.
Yeah, and this actually brings up a follow-up question. I've had a couple of conversations sort of in the lead up to this show with people that were sort of like really excited about the panelists we're going to have on, and wanting to sort of think about these tools and how they can sort of apply them to their organizations. And I'm curious, as a follow-up to this question, how should organizations and campaigns potentially and others be thinking about the like being a power user with these tools? Like how do you approach this? What is there training? Is there, insights? Like what is the best way to think about these tools? Oh, we just had a little bit of a hiccup, but we're back. Okay. So maybe Franz, I'll toss it to you first, but really curious for both of you how you think about like when you're talking to a new client, like how are you sort of setting them up for success when they begin to sort of really plug into these AI tools?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first step, the most important one, is around education,
Hmm.
right? We came out of like the creator space, which is, the creators on TikTok and YouTube and so forth, which started using Opus Clip in the beginning. And now there's a really interesting shift that's happening. Like this year at Vid Summit, which is a really big creator conference where all the creators go to learn how to
Right.
master their craft. We actually saw a lot more people from like traditional industries like media, like the news media and PAX and so forth attending these conferences, even though they're not creators, right? But I think a lot of people are catching on to the idea that, hey, these creators are the canary in the coal mine. They're the ones who are the most excited about AI and the most excited about testing out new tools, and are also the ones to stand to benefit the most from it because they're the young upstarts who are trying to establish themselves. And so we're educating like media companies and campaigns and packs a lot around the techniques that are being used by the world's top creators to put out content at scale, right? We have creators who have a small team, maybe 3 or 4 people, who are able to post thousands of videos a week on different social channels. And that's only possible through the use of AI. And so I think, one thing which to your question, like how do you get started? It's very easy to get started now and it's very democratized. Like it's actually relatively
Mhm.
cheap to get started like the old ways of campaigning or like promoting.
Oop.
And so I think AI has a massive democratizing effect.
Great. And apologies for we're having a couple of like a little video blackouts, but the audio is coming through clear. So hopefully folks are able to continue to stay on. And Russ will be back as quickly as he can. Maya, anything to add to that?
I think that's great. Yeah, I would just add, I do think it's democratizing in the sense that a lot of people are able to build new tools and learn how the new technology works, which I think is really important. When we talk to folks, especially ones that are very curious about the new technology, but not exactly sure entirely what it does or what the results are going to be. We always suggest first starting with something small.
Hmm.
Start with a test or a case study of where you're seeing the problem. And we try to move them as fast as possible to seeing the output and the result. I think what often happens with folks in discovering new tools, or especially in the AI space, is then you spend a lot of time in chat prompts and you're then just sort of in this
Right.
endless loop of, and of course you want to be, learn how to do that really well and be an expert at prompting. But new folks can tend to then just spend a lot of time doing that. And we try to avoid that as much as possible in our platform and also just in our work with them. Just how do we get you from problem to solution as fast as possible to see the outputs and help you continue to do that and improve on it.
Cool, cool. Awesome. All right, let's get to our next question. This one comes to us from John Schultz. Can anyone speak on how AI generated clips perform on social media versus human ideated or edited clips? Is there any data valuable? Franz, I feel like you might have something to say here.
Yes, absolutely. There was a technical glitch, so I hope I'm not going to glitch out again. But great question, John. When it comes to like human versus AI generated clips, I think right now, if a human were to spend, several hours on a piece of content, they would be able to probably create a clip that is potentially better performing than a AI generated clip, right? The problem with that is just that right now the name of the game on social is not just high quality clips, it's also high quality and high volume at the same time. Like it's not
Right.
enough to just have quite high quality anymore. Like I said, like we have creators who are individual creators putting out thousands of clips a week. it's not enough to like sit there and handcraft free clips per week and then call it a day and say like, I've done my free clips, because the algorithms favor creators who post more, and they also want to show, like content to the right audiences more often. So if you have a clip which is very, very relevant to an audience, but it's only one clip, they might watch it once and then move on. But if
Hmm.
you have different variations of that clip, or have like additional content following onto that clip, what somebody who is a big fan of yours can watch, the algorithm will actually like match that with that person and just show them their entire feed just of like clips from, your campaign or your cause, right? And so because of the scrolling behavior, it's not enough to put out one clip and say like, okay, this was enough. Like you actually have to just keep on putting out more clips on a regular basis, which is really where AI comes in, because that's not something you could do by yourself. Like if you have, three people on
Hmm.
a team, you could maybe put out like one clip a day per person, or maybe like two, but like you kind of run into bottlenecks soon, which the only way to overcome that is either to hire a lot of people, which is very expensive, or to start adopting AI and just like leaning into this new technology.
Right, totally. It's interesting. It really has like that reality has affected a lot of the conversations we've had with our clients around really prioritizing long form content, with the idea that that will create the resource for you to do, clipping and generate that flow, that steady flow of content to engage your audience. That really is
Yeah.
such an important way to think about it, especially, we're in the process of supporting a couple of folks that are launching their political campaigns for 2026. And really one of the sort of foundational conversations we've had with those folks is, what are you going to do to create the long form content that you can then clip and use to really engage your audience in a consistent and predictable way, because that's the way you're going to break through. The algorithm, there is no like, you know, get creative and make one viral video and you're you're home free. It really is like, it is the consistent engagement. It is building a workflow that allows you to sort of have a throughput of content that is active, that is
Yeah.
really active on all the social platforms, and formatted appropriately for those platforms, so that the algorithm um, gives it a chance to break
Yeah.
through and do what it needs to do.
Absolutely. And the other thing, because John asked for numbers as well, like what we do regularly is we ask our clients to like put up like a couple of videos that we create for them, because it's so easy to create this content. Like we often create content for them just to show them what it would look like. We often ask them to post it, and that content often does like 2 to 3 times better than the videos that they have on their social right now. And it's not to say anything about like the videos they have on their social right now, but they might not be following best practices. They might not understand like what is a good hook. They might not understand the audience often enough, because oftentimes the editor who's creating these clips might be so far detached from the audience that they don't necessarily know what works best. And so with Opus, one of the beauties of this is that you as an editor can use this as your AI thought partner. Like we will
Hmm.
suggest clips and you can try to understand them with the AI. We give you explanations on why we picked certain things. And then you can like work with the AI to understand like, okay, this one might actually do better on social versus this one, which I would have picked because of XYZ reason. And then you can experiment there. The other one is timing as well. Like I said, like we actually go into your archive and find timely bits where
Hmm.
if, a topic blows up in Congress, like right now with the Epstein files, we can pull out all the moments that your candidate talked about the Epstein files and post those. And in that moment, these clips do up to 20 times better. Like if you would just take an Epstein video and put it randomly out, people are not going to necessarily watch it at the same rate as right now when it's the topic of the day, and everybody's just scrolling Epstein files and looking at the hashtag Epstein and just trying to figure out what's going on there, right? And so these are like things that I think AI can really shine there by like being a thought partner to you as the editor.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see when we ingest the show into Opus Clip if it will prioritize this clip, because you mentioned the Epstein file several times, and be like, this
Perfect.
this clip will go viral.
There's a good
Maya,
chance.
anything to add here?
I would just add, I mean, obviously we're talking about, social or organic content. On
Hmm.
the advertising side, very similar, but, personalizing that to an even deeper level, being able to personalize ads, especially video ads, in a way that resonate, and be able to scale that. Most folks
Right.
do not have huge teams to make 100 versions of an ad, or different scripts and variations. And we know from performance, even without AI, that personalization does better. But we have seen that consistently, not only just in text and image and video, that the more personalized and relevant, to Franz's point, like relevant, especially like if something is happening that we want to be talking about it, creating an ad often takes much more time, as you all know. And being able to do that faster and have that go out and be relevant to folks in that moment, or when they're watching a certain type of content and have it be hyper personalized and relevant, those are options that are now scalable and available to people in a way that was never possible and makes the experience better for people. It's not just ad slop, but actually personalized to their behaviors and habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Russ, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to build on something that Franz said. Our relationship as content creators with the platforms is really complicated, and there's a double-edged sword, and we can go on for an hour about it. But they, above all things, they want people to watch the content. They want people on their platform, like the single best people in the world at figuring out what stuff is going to go and what stuff's going to be successful at this moment is the platforms. That's what they spend their entire time and trillions of dollars figuring out. So if you're able to leverage tools where you're able to give them a lot of bites of the apple to help you along, it's all your content. You said it all, but what version is the best? I mean, let them test it. Let them test it and
Yeah.
figure it out. I
Right.
mean, in this world, everyone thinks that a failure is going to be you said something wrong or all this kind of stuff on social clips, but the failure is when nobody watches it, right? And in that sense, like nobody sees your failures because the platforms don't show it to anybody, right? It dies in the algorithm. So give them a lot of options, right? It's all your content. It's all stuff that you want to say, but give them a lot of options and let them find the audience for your message. And I mean, the relationship is complicated, but at least we can use them for that.
Right.
Yeah, I could have not said it better, Russ. Like you should start, joining Opus Clip as well. But I think what's really true about that as well is that like people assume they have this one channel, and this one channel is where they have to put all their content, and every bad video, like every video which doesn't get a lot of views, is gonna like drag the channel down, right? But actually the opposite is true. Like AI enables you to experiment a lot more because the cost of content production is going down. And so one of the areas we see this a lot is with local news outlets. They have all these stories that might not never hit the airwaves, but they're able to produce a lot more content, and they post it on their main channel where they might want to spend more time on. And to John's point, they might want to have a human review it and so forth. But they can also post it on side channels. They can have like side news outlets as well, where side channels which are like, dedicated to specific topics. And there they can just like post topical clips and see which ones work and experiment. And if a clip takes off, they then put it onto the main channel. And because they know it's a winner, and then
Right.
create more content like that as well. And
Yeah.
so through this volume, you just have a lot more opportunity to experiment, which is I think another beauty of like the approach using more AI.
Yeah, Franz, talking with you about how that works. The thing that you said to me in a previous conversation that really stuck with me is we're going to stop thinking about our success in terms of channels, and we're going to start thinking about our success in terms of actual pieces of content. So if you take the same piece of content and you spread it across 20 channels, you don't care which ones hit channels and which ones didn't. It's how the content did, and having the tools to know that this piece of content that I spread across these 6 channels, or this piece of content that I spread across, like you can look at the actual piece of content and its success metrics, not be hemmed into what your actual channel does. And that's a really interesting way to think about the success of your message and the success of what that piece of what your content, how it's successful.
So true. I think one of the biggest shifts, so this has happened also due to AI actually, but not on the consumer side, on the platform side, is that the For You feed, which TikTok introduced, has become so good that subscribers are actually less important now. Subscribers are less important now. Like if you post a clip about Joe Rogan on like a brand new channel, the algorithm will still match it with Joe Rogan's audience because the algorithm realizes this is Joe Rogan and the audience would really like it, right? So it doesn't have to be on Joe Rogan's main channel for people to discover it anymore. And so if you're Joe Rogan, for example, you could be like posting on multiple different side channels and getting a ton of views just because the algorithm is so good at always funneling it back to the same people. And similarly to political candidates, causes, and so forth as well, it doesn't really matter like which channel you post it on because the algorithm will just match it with the people who care about these things as long as you keep on posting similar kind of contents. So if you post, for example, like about, let's say the Israel-Palestine conflict, like you should probably be posting more about like content in that area because then it gets matched to that same audience. If you post about that conflict and then the Epstein files and then about like all kinds of other stuff, you might actually start confusing the algorithm about like who is this channel for, right? And so it's important to like start getting really specific about like which content you want to post on each channel and like which audience is this for? Like who is the person that this channel is targeting?
Yeah. And by the way, it's like
Meta,
clear that you work for Opus Clip because you've now mentioned like two things that like have the like virality potential. It'll be really interesting to see if those get picked up when we do
it
the
feels like
clipping.
Meta is still pretty good, or Meta still cares a little bit on their channels to Instagram, Facebook, about your follower count. But man, if you read any forums at all, starting like February or January or February this year, TikTok creators were apoplectic about how their follower count didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Like they could have 300,000 followers and they'd make a video, and if it wasn't good, it would get shown to 10 people. Like it just wouldn't, nothing would happen.
Yeah.
But it just didn't care about it. They only care about virality, and they only care about quality of the content. They don't care about follower count at all anymore, which was a pretty big shift.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You're only as good as your next video, right? You can't rest on your laurels. That's why you have to keep on experimenting because you don't know which one is the next video which is going to pop off.
Well, I think about this in terms sometimes too of like it's sort of like the sort of old school sort of media game, social media game of like you need like for persuasion to be effective, you need to reach an individual a number of times with a message, right? That it takes, three, four, five impressions to begin to sort of change an opinion or impact and how a person thinks about an issue. And this is just, the game here is to get in front of people by clipping, by using all of these different tools, because you can't do it the old-fashioned way, like the old-fashioned Facebook way of like buying ads for a specific audience, but you do it through getting as much information out there that has the potential to
Both.
reach that audience. Well, yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
No,
in the algorithmic sense. But the goal is still that goal of just like you want to get multiple impressions
Yeah.
with a person, and that's the way you're going to affect their
Yeah.
And
what they're
especially
trying to affect.
before that, right? That was just kind of reserved for large organizations.
Right.
Like that was just big companies. They could put content everywhere. They could put ads everywhere. They could have creators or influencers. And now that, to Franz's earlier point, like we can do that on a much bigger scale for people who do not have the same amount of resources, but they have powerful messages. And yeah, maybe that breaks through in a viral moment, but it's not just about the one moment, right? They have to keep doing that. They have to be on every channel. They have to be consistent on every channel, but also like they need to put in the, now just a few tools to get that to scale. That gives so many more people the opportunity to actually, especially now that it's not, you don't have to have millions of followers. You can just have really,
Yeah.
a high volume of quality content.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
one
think
thing which
about this
is,
is,
oh,
sorry,
go for it, Ross.
go ahead, Franz.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say there as well, because one of the pushbacks we get here as well is like, well, but do the platforms actually want you to create other channels as well? Like, wouldn't the platform want like everything to be in its neat channel and you're just kind of like trying to game the system? We're actually seeing the exact opposite. Like, we have several customers, like large media companies with like 10 million plus subscribers, who get approached by the platforms who tell them that they would want them to put out more channels, right? Because what's happening is that there's so much demand for this very high quality type of content, right? That the platforms don't have enough of it. They know that these like news outlets have more of this content. They want more of that content on their platform, but then
Right.
because of the way the game is rigged and so forth, they don't want the platform the news outlets don't feel like they should be posting 600 times on the same channel a day. It would be
Right.
too confusing. It would mess with their numbers. And so these large platforms are actually encouraging news outlets and others to put out side channels to make sure that they get more like content so they can satisfy the demand as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
interesting.
wanted to not to put Maya on the spot, but I wanted to get back to quickly a point about campaigns and about small campaigns and about the tools that we're doing here. And sadly, I mean, God knows how much, how important to success just name recognition is. I mean, to Sai's point, getting in front of somebody 5 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 15 times just so they know your name, so that when you're
Mhm.
looking down a ballot, oh, I heard of that person, I never heard of that person. I mean, it's stunning how important that is in terms of electability. But how are you seeing this stuff help small campaigns and getting off the ground with limited resources?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. It's like if you, I know obviously we would need folks to start earlier, right? To Sai's point, like you need
Mhm.
to hear about a candidate multiple times, not just the first, the last 2 weeks before an election. So if they can start earlier, but also the ability to not only create, of course, organic content, they need to be on every channel. That bar is low. And we can now even provide lower bars to entry for advertising, so that they can actually pinpoint and target who's seeing that content in a more effective way. We were able to do a lot of this testing in this last cycle, to really show and test video on a local level, and show that it really is just about that name ID. It can just be a very positive bio piece on somebody. Get it out early, tell people who you are, and don't worry too much about how don't have to spend high dollars. Like it's about getting in front of the right people, and talking about who you are, especially at the local level. Obviously, that changes as you scale, but it has a huge impact, and we've seen that in some testing in the last cycle, and hope to do that a lot more on a much bigger scale and as we move forward.
Yeah, I think just to speak to the campaign piece here as well, I think it's like I was at a sort of a political fundraiser last night, getting to talk to a candidate who was talking about just like the importance of every dollar they raise and how to utilize that dollar.
Mm.
And what I think is so interesting about this upcoming election cycle is you have access to these tools that allow you to do so much more with less bodies, less resources. And it doesn't mean that those campaigns need less money, because they still need that money to do their buys, to do, to hire their on the ground people. But it really is like, I think the campaigns that are going to really be successful this upcoming cycle are the ones that understand like where to invest that money, where to really leverage tools like this to scale their campaign, to scale their reach, and do all the things, right? Like you still have to do all of the things. And this came up in the conversation last night, but somebody was like, oh, I need to be able to afford an editor and this and that. And I was like, yeah, but like maybe for your like shiny polished thing, but like
Hmm.
for clipping and all this stuff, there are these resources, and you should be thinking about them, and your team should be thinking about them now, and really plugging in so that you get better at it, and you sort of figure out your workflow. And that to me is what's so exciting about this moment. Like I really see this as sort of just this moment of like amplification of all of these things that we already need to be doing, but just be doing more effectively, and sort of being able to scale your operation. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see the people that really effectively adopt these tools, and how that changes just how these campaigns win
I,
moving forward.
I think that's a
100%. Yeah.
great point. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Franz,
Go for
go.
it, Maya.
No, no. I was just
Oh,
gonna say your point is like you can give the strategy and like and the thought, especially to folks that don't have a huge amount of resources. This goes for any organization. Like the strategy is human, right? Franz's best practices, like those are we're providing that as the strategic guidance. And then there's all of these like small workflow things that take up a lot of time and energy. And that's where you can maximize
Mhm.
the like what you need to do to launch your campaign. Like the strategy behind that, that is definitely experience based, and then we can perfect all the workflow parts.
Totally. Franz,
yeah.
did you
Sorry.
want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, like I'm the most bullish actually on small campaigns, because large campaigns have been doing
Right.
this for a long time, right? I think like 2016 already there were like studies around like how, Facebook ads were used to micro target specific audiences and so forth,
Mhm.
right? But if you look at like the CPM, like you need probably like somewhere between $8 to $14 to reach 1,000 people with these kind of ads. Versus with clipping campaigns, like we did the math on it, it's somewhere between 30 cents to $2. And so it just shows you like there's a huge difference in terms of like the economy around these kind of
Right.
clipping campaigns, the reach you can have with them, and like just how far you can stretch your dollars if you're like a micro influencer, especially if you have very good content, right? You saw it with like the mayoral election in New York, where like a candidate who was not an establishment candidate was able to upset everything just by using like modern social media strategies, right? And so I
100%.
think that's something which I'm very bullish on, because I think it will give like smaller folks who are not establishment candidates also a shot at, landing a seat.
Yeah. And I would the thing, not to sort of turn this into a conversation about what we do at Hardpin, but I'm excited about it in terms of it's not, to me, all of this isn't sort of a replacing the need for professional production. It's amplifying what you can create with professional production and making sure more people see it, right? Like
Yeah.
both from a standpoint of like Maya, what you're doing, and then from a clipping standpoint. And it informs how we talk to our clients, like I mentioned earlier, from a standpoint of like the value you can generate by thinking more about long form content because of that potential for clipping it and doing more with it and reaching more platforms. And that's a really exciting conversation to have, because ultimately everybody wants value from what they're paying for. And the more you can sort of
Yeah.
define that value for them, it tends to be a really positive conversation. So that's been really exciting, and we've really been trying to lead with that, like not sort of say like, oh no, like we'll do all this for you. It's like, no, like let's work together, and then these tools can really help you sort of maximize your output and your
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
the
gonna get in trouble for a second when I say that nobody asked me, right? Especially our clients, they don't put me on client calls for good reason. But
Ah,
if you ask me, we cannot get you elected. We cannot like make your campaign. What we can do is help you present the best version of yourself.
yeah,
And I believe strongly that the people who should be getting elected are the people with the best message and the best plan for their constituents, like and getting those plans and getting those cleanly to the electorate so they can make an informed decision is everything we want to do, and I believe strongly that that's our role. In terms of targeting and in terms of these in terms of advertisements, or in terms of clipping or all this kind of stuff, we're not selling laundry detergent here. Like, I'm not strong arming you and trying to fool you. In theory, I'm talking about the candidates are talking about your future. Like, the message itself should be selling the content. And so what we're talking about is we're talking about tools that take that message and broadly distribute it so the message can do the work, right? So
yeah.
that you can get so much value, so you don't have to pay to push a message that people already need to hear or that people are already interested in.
Yeah.
The message itself broadly, hopefully, can do the work for you. And that's having that tool set for small campaigns to get to that is really, really, really exciting.
But
Yeah.
I also think, to your point on the laundry detergent, I think there is there's a very clear opportunity for both, political and whether that's nonprofit or corporate side, or public sector, to learn from the private sector. Like, while many corporations are perfecting a lot of these tools and scaling tools and adopting at a faster rate. We don't have to, political campaigns don't have to move at the adoption rate of a for-profit company, but they do need to see what they're doing. We do need to learn from both sides. And I
yeah.
think oftentimes they silo themselves. And I think the best opportunities are when those tools can really work for both places.
If I can
No,
figure
totally.
out how to sell you Arm and Hammer free and clear to like a couple million people, imagine what we can do when we're talking about your healthcare, right? Like, using the same tools with a message that people actually want to listen to. You don't want to leave them
Like,
behind.
what
Yeah.
happened to the jingle? We used to have fun political campaign jingles. We don't bring those around anymore. Like, there are fun ways to make that a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, no,
That's
for sure.
awesome.
Cool. Well, we've been going really strong on this and sort of want to make sure that we begin to sort of get to the end, ahead of the end of the hour. Our goal is always to keep this just about under an hour. So we've got two more questions on deck. I'm going to try and get to these really quickly and see if we have some insights here to share. This next one comes to us from Larry G. What are some of the potential ethical dilemmas that you see coming down the road, or are currently navigating and using AI in content production, especially for political content? Ooh, that is a juicy one. Franz, you want to take us off?
Yeah. Way to close the show out with political dilemmas. But I actually want to go back to the comment you made, Simon, as well. Like, you do need people like Hardpin as well to create great content for you, because all that I just discussed rests on the foundation of like great, authentic, truthful content, right? Like, it needs to be
Hmm.
something that resonates with an audience, and that piece of content, which maybe otherwise would have been seen by like 100,000 people, can now be repurposed and rejigged so it can be seen by like 10 million people across like hundreds of different variations, right? But that's still, like, you need that foundation. And so when it comes to political dilemmas, I think like the question is always like, should everybody have access to tools that are this powerful? Like, if you can amplify anybody's speech like 10x, 100x, like, should everybody have access to it? I think this is my personal view, not Opus Clip's view, but my personal view on it is that like the only way to protect free speech is like more speech as well. And so I'm always taking a very like liberal stance on it, that I think we should not cherry pick who gets to use a tool like this, but the market should decide. That
Hmm.
being said, we have been very careful with like who we work with, specifically when, we get requests from, somewhat seedy looking customers or potential customers as well. And we have turned down customers in the past as well. On our self-serve plan, like, anybody can sign up, anybody can pay for it. It's like $15 a month. It's very cheap to use. But there's a lot more manual labor involved. So we automatically capped kind of like the reach you can have,
Hmm.
versus on our business plans and enterprise tiers, there's a lot of automation. So, the speech can get amplified quite a bit. And so I think that is just something which, as a small startup, I personally think that you need to take a liberal approach and say, like, we don't pick winners. But then we work very closely with the large social platforms who obviously have much stricter guidelines. And unfortunately, they have to grapple with all these questions, but they also have the resources and lawyers and so forth to actually come up with the right guidelines for those
Right.
questions as well.
It's funny. I was thinking about this in terms of like this idea of like, oh, if everybody is using these tools, isn't it just creating more, sort of more content that is going to be harder? It's going to get harder and harder to reach people. I sort of think of it more of like it's just the next sort of like evolutionary step. There was some person that first stepped on a soapbox, and eventually everybody got a soapbox. There was the first person that used the bullhorn, and then, everybody else got a bullhorn. And ultimately, what mattered is what are you saying and how are you, like what we were talking about earlier, like what is the content and how is that actually ultimately engaging people and getting people to pay attention to you and sort of garner interest. And so it's like these tools are quickly going from a I don't want to call it a novelty, but something new and novel, to something that is required, right? Like you will need these tools to be competitive, and then it's just the thing that will stay the same is what is the quality of your message and how are you effectively, sort of demonstrating that value to the audience you're trying to reach. And I think that, that's where again, and thank you for that soundbite. We're going to clip the thing about like Hardpin still being a thing that you need.
That's going to be the number one ranked clip.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
We're
Yes.
going to goose that one. But yeah, I think that's like ultimately, that sort of like storytelling is like a forever, it's a forever thing. Like good storytellers will always break through, no matter the medium, no matter the things. And you have to get good at the tools, you have to understand how these things work and the platforms work. But ultimately good messages will break through, or good content will break through. And I think that's true of, and that's been true forever, and I'm old enough now to remember being involved in campaigns where it was like digital was like the kids table
We're the new
of
media
campaigns,
team.
yeah, of campaign strategy, where it was like, oh yeah, 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 you're gonna make some videos for the internet, and we're like, no, we're making like really good content that is like maybe more impressive than some of the stuff that's going on TV. And ultimately now everything is digital, and now beyond even that, everything is sort of like social content, and it is really just the intention economy that we live in, and figuring out how to navigate that with good messages is important, and these tools are really, 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 really vital to that. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all new technology, right?
Yeah.
You need seat belts. You need you need to have some guardrails, and there's always, risk that comes with new tools, but we have to address those and make sure that we harness it in a way that's effective and ethical, to your point.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I
Go
think
ahead.
jumping in, sorry, just addressing one quick thing, the ethical dilemma. I think the biggest ethical dilemma right now is the difference between it's again the difference between generative AI and like tool AI and organizational AI that helps you organize things. And the danger is people thinking that you're not authentic, that it's not your words, that you're saying what AI told you to say, or in some way, right? And your content not being authentic or your message not being authentic. I think that's the biggest ethical dilemma. If you again, not to refer to last week's show too much, but if you listen to Jeremy in terms of in terms of generative AI tools, he says don't use them at all right now. because the people like are the broader audience is not literate enough yet with the tools to understand like the nuance that you may be getting to, and they may be thinking that you're faking it, right? And things
Yeah.
being fake. So the idea of using these AI tools and to help you hone your message, or to help you distribute your message, or to help you figure out what part of your message is resonant is a different thing than making your message for you. And I think that's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, and just to layer on that a little bit, because I think this was an interesting part of the conversation last week that speaks to this point we're talking about now. When you have somebody like, Coca-Cola, who made an AI generated ad, right? It took them something like 700,000 iterations to get to the thing that they ultimately were like comfortable putting out. So, this idea that generative AI is this like shortcut to quality content, I think is, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to those kinds of things. And again, it goes back to a thing, Franz, that you said earlier, which is that, people really have to change the way they think about this from a standpoint of something that is automated versus something that is AI, right? Like, you're never going to get the same outcome with AI, and that's sort of the point, that it's always going to be sort of like refining, 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 and that there's still this like really important place for human operators and human participation that needs to effectively leverage that, right? Like
Yeah.
that sort of variation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Simon, you mentioned something really important though, and like what happens if everybody starts using something like this? Like, where is the trend going? And I think there's a really interesting observation you talked about, next year's campaign cycle and election cycle as well. Like, the last cycle was very much like a podcast election cycle. Like, everybody
Mm.
realized that there's like a direct to audience connection they can have if they go on these podcasts. And so, again, this channel is becoming saturated. Everybody will go on podcasts. How many 3 or 4 hour conversations can you listen to? So then the podcasts become kind of like more of a clip farm, where you go
Yeah.
on these 4 hour conversations just like we did right now, and then we joke about like, oh, this would be a really good clip, which is probably literally how they're thinking about it. They're like, oh, let me get in that sound bite, and then people will like discover them, and then they will listen to the longer podcasts. And so that's just kind of like the natural evolution of where things are going, and it is becoming table stakes to like do these kind of longer form informations and conversations.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think it's a positive trend. Even though you're clip farming most of the time, like still a 4 hour conversation allows for a lot more nuance than what we had before, which was just a TikTok video, which was just saying something outrageous and that was it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead, Maya. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I agree, and I think to Franz's and Russ's point, Russ, as you mentioned, like not using the tools at all, I think just to emphasize that that would be a large mistake to not use the tools, because we need to be the ones informing how the tools evolve and how they work, and how we can scale our messages in positive, impactful ways. So we have to be the ones, generally speaking, not just the people on the call that are powering these and giving feedback and iterating, because otherwise other people will, and that's never, you don't want to take the power out of your own hands from the jump.
Yeah, totally. And I think this question was a good one to end it on. I had one more sort of thought that I wanted to add to this because I think it's sort of we're touching on it a little bit, and I think this is a good way to sort of like from my perspective at least to summarize a lot of what we're saying. You know, we have this our partner company and Novel Messaging when we sort of work with them and are talking to sort of clients about like, oh, you know, what should we do? Should we be making really thinking about our media buy? Should we be thinking about connected TV? Should we be thinking about social clips and TikToks? And the reality is you have to be thinking about all of them. Like that, like it is like in order to reach people, you have to do all of the above. And like leveraging tools that you have access to allow you to do that, right? It is no longer you need like the TikTok person that makes the TikTok videos. You need the media buy person who does like there are so many tools, there's so many ways to streamline this sort of content creation and creating the reach that is now a requirement because you can't just buy, I mean, you could buy an ad on the Super Bowl, I guess, if you're Kanye West and shoot it on your iPhone and that will have a massive amount of reach. But generally speaking, people are all over on various platforms, and the best way to sort of engage them, reach them is to do all of the things and leverage all of these tools to maximize the potential to reach the audience you need to reach. And so it takes strategy, on the buy side, like really targeting the audience you're looking to target. It takes having a strong sort of organic strategy and really creating a pipeline of content that you continue to sort of feed into the algorithm that gives you the opportunity to break through and reach people, whether it's for fundraising, whether it's for awareness, whether it's for conversion. All of those things are true. And so that can feel overwhelming, but I think what for me is exciting when we're talking about looking ahead is, understanding how to like take these tools and incorporate them into your workflow allows you to do a lot more with a lot less, which is the thing that ultimately will make you competitive, and that's exciting. And we were saying this earlier, it's giving a chance to smaller campaigns to compete and to do some things that were a lot more expensive and a lot harder to do just a couple of years ago. So I think that part of it is really exciting and sort of democratizing about a lot of this, which is cool. So with that, I want to sort of give everybody a chance to sort of give us some final thoughts. We had a lot of questions here about tools, about how to use them, how they work. Any final thoughts before we sort of wrap the show, Franz? So I'll start with you.
Yeah. I really love the conversation. Lots of great insights, which came out of it. I think for me, it's just about figuring out where can AI become your superpower versus an efficiency gain. It's not enough to just say like, oh, I can do the same thing but quicker, which opens me up to do something else. Where are the opportunities to do something that you would have never been able to do if you leverage AI? Like instead of making it easy to post 3 clips a day, how can you post like 1,000 videos on social media and really make sure that your message gets out there, right? These are the kind of opportunities which I'm the most bullish about because they allow you to do so much more that previously would have been unthinkable.
Right. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Maya, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I would say that not only do you need to think about where to turn this into your superpower, but you also need to think about this as like a real asset in your toolkit as you launch any organization or any work you're doing, and do that in a thoughtful, structured way. I think there's a lot, and there was obviously a lot of headwinds in 2024. There's a lot of fear from folks about what these tools can do, and that often can cause paralysis. Like then that you don't opt into them or try them. You gotta get in there, gotta get your feet wet, you gotta learn the tools and see how they can impact your work. So I just challenge folks to do that and to learn and to try things out without coming in with a fear to prevent you from doing that.
Yeah, totally. And I think one thing that's I think has been true for me, and I wonder if people experience this too, is that the sort of that that part of the outcome that changes, that AI sort of like trying to predict where something is going based on all of this information that it's processing. It's also great as a way to sort of learn yourself, right? Like as you're sort of like looking at those outcomes and saying, well, why would it give me that outcome? Um, and how should I be thinking about that? Franz, you were saying the thing about like, when it's telling you like this might go viral or this sort of is like really trending on the internet, that can then inform a lot of other things that you're thinking about from a standpoint of strategy and like what kind of content you should be making next to capture that, that momentum that AI is sort of like making aware of. And so there's so many facets of this that are so interesting. And the more I think people allow themselves to begin to experiment with these tools and experiment with how they work in their, for what they're functionally trying to do and their goals, it really, it's just a really, I think it's just a really exciting moment because it really gives people a lot more to think about. It just opens up so much potential. And there's still like this really creative part of it. It's not like this thing of like, use the tool and then, you're just you become this, lever pull person. There is still so much that you get to sort of do to make the outcomes more effective and to sort of like really drive towards better and better outcomes. And that's been like the really exciting part, I think, for me too, when I think about how I've been using these tools, even just within what we do at Hardpin. Russ, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a metaphor, so I'll go out on this one. We talk a lot about a pipeline of content, about pipeline of content, this flow of content that never stops. And I feel like what we're really talking about here is we're talking about like a waterfall of content where it's different lengths to different people at different depths, however deep though your audience wants to go with your content, whether that's long form, whether that's an hour, whether that's 30 seconds, whether that's 10 seconds, whether that's 5 minutes, whatever. You're making a content structure where you can meet your audience wherever their attention level will allow and let them go as deep as they want to go, and kind of having that under a cohesive strategy. And I feel like these tools are really allowing you to build that and think about how you're going to have your message in that way. So that's what I find really, really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on that note, let me just say thank you again to Franz and Maya for joining us today and having this really great conversation. For people that are curious, definitely go check out Battleground AI and Opus Clip. Those are two fantastic tools that have such value, and people who are launching campaigns or working in organizations that are looking to do more in 2026, reach more people, create more impact. I really encourage you to explore these tools. And if you have any questions, go find Maya and Franz on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd be happy to have a conversation about how these tools might be effective for you. And Russ, thank you again for being part of the panel and also running all of this tech in the background. If folks knew all of the layers of technology that are in play right now in the background, they would be blown away. It is not a small endeavor here in the virtual sense, but really excited again to have another great show and look forward to seeing folks when we come back live in December. Have a great Thanksgiving, and yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.